Good evening. You want to save the world, right? If you want to save the world, you got to change the world. And if you're going to change the world, you need a catchy slogan to change the world with. For years, I've heard this slogan, "We're all in the same boat." In the last 10 years, I have spent 2,300 nights of my life on a cruise ship. And let me tell you that when you're on a cruise ship, you know that you're not in the same boat. I'm an anthropologist. I'm also an American. This means that I like cliches, and I like to oversimplify, overcomplicate, oversimplify, and overcomplicate things again. Over the last 20 years of my life, I've traveled to all ends of the planet. I have seen people at their best, and I have seen people at their worst. I have believed that people are equal, but I have seen that they're not. I have seen that we all have different opportunities and we all have different circumstance. And that means that for each one of us out there, we're not equal. Tonight, I'm going to tell you everything I've learned over the last 20 years in about 10 minutes, which I think is about right. And in that, we're going to look at this metaphor of being in the same boat, and we're going to go from figurative to literal to figurative to literal until finally we don't know what type of boat we're in. This is great. I started my career after being an anthropologist working in corporate team building. That was a lot of fun for me. What I did when I was in corporate team building is I worked with lots of people who wanted to be on an equal level. What I found out was that they weren't. And the harder they tried to be on an equal level, it got worse and worse and worse. And more than that, they were disconnected, not only from each other in these team building exercises, but from all the other people out there that didn't have the opportunity to do this. My staff in these beautiful areas would work with corporations who wanted to do things better, who wanted to make the world better, while at the same time disregarding the people who were there to help them make the world better. This was the first time I learned about the difference between guest and host and the imbalance between hospitality provider and hospitality receiver. In team building, we put people in a lot of ridiculous situations, including putting them in whitewater rafts. And we tell them that we're going to put you in a boat to show you that you're all in the same boat, and you're going to have to work really hard together as a team to float down a river. But if you don't want to work that hard, Human Resources says we're not going to make you work that hard, so you can just pretend to paddle. And what we find out in these boats, in these rafts, is that as people move down the river, the dangerous river, they reassume the exact same positions they had in the workplace. The boss is the boss. The wimp is the wimp. The oversensitive person is oversensitive. And throughout this, people start to realize how to milk the system. If you were to float a corporate team down a river for 3 weeks, eventually one guy would figure out how to just sit back and enjoy the cruise. We then started doing ridiculous things with people who wanted to be equal in teams but couldn't afford to go whitewater rafting, which was great. And so we took cardboard and duct tape and we said, you guys make your own boats. This is going to be really nice. So we're going to take your 20-person team and divide you into 5 groups of 4. The math's right. We're going to divide you into 5 groups of 4, and we're going to give you some duct tape and some cardboard because we're going to kill the planet at the same time we're trying to get you to work better together. And we're going to get you guys to get in this boat and then get into a swimming pool, and somehow that's going to make you be a team. What we realized is, and what I realized was, you never put the fat kid in the boat that you want to win. That was the first thing we learned. And by the time you get everybody into the boat, only the people who were engineers beforehand made the boats float. And so I'd look at these things and I'd say, guys, I just realized what's wrong with your team. And they'd say, you know what, don't worry about it. We're going on to cocktails. It doesn't really matter for us. So I realized that, hey, these boats don't really exist. And the only way to get everybody in the same boat is to have one person in one boat. It's true. And then I started traveling more and more and looking at all these other boats that had multiple people in. And I said, my gosh, you're kind of not in the same boat, but these are really interesting containers. These are really interesting segments of our society that's floating around. And as an anthropologist, I get to say as an anthropologist a lot, but as an anthropologist, I get to finally study something that's kind of cool and that's current and contemporary. I looked at some boats that were classic examples of we're all in the same boat, such as Noah's Ark. What a horrible boat to be all in the same boat with. Not only were there not a lot of people in there disproving the idea that it's good to be in the same boat, but it was very easy to get eaten if you're in that boat. It was very easy to have a difficult time. And I realized in the ideal concept of we're all in the same boat, not a good boat to be in. I looked at other boats that were out there, and between boats, same boats didn't exist. Even between different boats, there weren't same boats. This is a yacht in Saint-Tropez, great boat to be on. Not in the same boat as these guys off of Turkmenistan. I guarantee you that. But then I had my aha moment. I ran away to sea, and I went and worked on a cruise ship. And I saw this beautiful container where I thought, finally, I can study people. I can study a society. I can study a community. And what I found out was that on a cruise ship, on the same boat with 1,000 people in one boat, you couldn't have a more accurate description of social inequality. You could not have a more accurate description of the imbalance of power. You could not have a more accurate description of challenges and a slice of the world. And this became very, very interesting for me, to the tune of over 2,000 nights of interest out there. On ships, there are 3 different relationships that happen. If you've been on a cruise, great. If you haven't been on a cruise, then you'll have to take my word for this. What happens on these ships that we study is you have 3 specific relationships between people. You have a relationship between passengers and crew members. And already this signifies an opportunity. You have a group of people who have the opportunity to go on vacation, and you have a group of people who have the opportunity to serve. And so inherently, you see a hierarchy develop in here. You see guests generally being respectful to crew members, being nice, thank you very much, thank you for my champagne, thank you for my bounty of shrimp, thank you for the excess water park time you gave me, and everything works out well until things go wrong. And as soon as people who have an opportunity to relax are not relaxed, they miss that opportunity, and who do they take it out on? Okay, you can answer that. You can figure that out. The next relationship that I saw was the relationship between passenger and passenger, or guest and guest. And this was even more peculiar to me because there are people who had agreed together, 3,000 of them maybe, that they wanted to actually be on the same boat, that they had the same preferences, that they wanted to go to the same places, eat the same foods, but then they felt it necessary to have a locker room situation where they could measure each other against themselves. And they would talk about their personal finances. They would talk about their homes. They would talk about how beautiful their children were, always trying to one-up each other. And on cruise ships, this is interesting because people really should be all in the same boat. The other relationship that was between crew members. And you thought that you could have one group of people that had some solidarity. There were people who were working for other people. And what you found out, or what I found out among crew members, is you had some people that are getting paid 600 pounds a month, and some people that are getting paid 6,000 pounds a month. And I'll tell you what, if you have someone that makes 10 times the amount of somebody else, you're not in the same boat. And in order for us to understand and appreciate how complicated the world around us is, we have to understand where people have disadvantages and other people have advantages. This is a great picture, being on an expedition down in Antarctica, that I like to show because it shows people who are actually in the same boat. The people in orange are passengers. They have paid to go on this trip. The people in yellow, one of which is me, are freezing their butts off, working together to try to get other people into a situation to make them more comfortable. Again, very interesting. Now, here's the real not surprise of this talk, because we're going to milk this metaphor as far as we can. The only way that you can, on a boat, account for this huge discrepancy of passengers, crew members, passengers, crew members, passengers, crew members, is by understanding that within this boat, there are several different boats. Everybody is in their boat. And the only way to tie these together is with a good captain. A good captain understands that everybody is different. A good captain understands that people have different situations that make them see the world differently. A good captain understands that when you say, hey, we're all in the same boat, that's a luxury that you have. You have a luxury to change. And all of us in this scenario here, all of us who are watching and listening, have an opportunity to change. And people who are not here, maybe they don't. And that's something to keep in mind. The best ships that I have worked on in my life have been under the control of the best captains. And the one thing that these captains have, beyond respect, beyond power, beyond superior navigation skills, which is very important if you're out in the middle of the ocean, is they have empathy. And they have the ability to step outside of their stripes. And they have the ability to move down and to talk to people who are on different boats within that same boat and find out what life is like for them, and they have the opportunity then to try to bring that back up. I've worked with so many crew members of so many different nationalities. At one point, I worked on a ship that had 52 different nationalities of crew. That's a lot. In that time, there were some breakaway countries. We ended up with, I think, 55 by the end of that one particular trip. But we had people who, for goodness sakes, a few years earlier had been at war with each other. And suddenly they were put in the same cabins to have to accomplish the same job. We had people who had come from incredibly difficult circumstances where they had to be away from their families for 10 months at a time in order to go home just to try to pay the bills when they got home. We coupled that with officers who were making a lot more, just to say the least. And the one thing that kept all these people together was that captain. And that's the important part. It's obvious, but it's essential. You have to be a captain of your own boat. If we say we're all in the same boat, we bring this back to London and we want to change because there's so many things that we can change in the world right now to make it a better place, whether it has to do with the environment, whether it has to do with lending a hand to someone who's just arrived under duress, whether it's something that we can do just to acknowledge that everybody around us, not just in this room, but everybody is a human being, we need to do it. And if you have a job where you have people who work for you, as much as you feel that you're all in the same boat, you're not in the same boat because they have different priorities, different feelings, different emotions, and different realities. So what I'm going to suggest is we're not in one boat, but that we're a fleet. And every one of you who is listening today, every one of you who is paying attention has to become the best captain you can possibly be. You need to raise a flag for what you believe in, and you need to understand that not everybody around you is going to have the time, the luxury, or the opportunity to embrace that goal. But only through your perseverance and only through your empathy can you get people back together on that same page, and can we move forward towards change. In London, I challenge you to go out and swim a nautical mile in somebody else's flippers. No, didn't work. All right. I encourage you to try to empathize with those that you think are closest to you and those who you think are at the most distant. If a weekend's coming up, I encourage you to go on a date with £7.50 in your wallet and try to see how you can get through a night. I encourage you to go home tonight with whoever you came with just one Oyster card. I encourage you, if you have employees, to find the person that's consistently late to work and go out to see what their commute is like, opposed to yours. I encourage you to listen and try to get to the people who are not at the same level that you are, because only then can we change. I think it's possible, especially through the power of TEDx, that we can change the world. And while it's obvious that we're not all in the same boat, we can certainly take the lessons of that, move forward, and encourage change now and forever. Thank you very much.